Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Paddy. Yeah, biomass is, I suppose, going up and down a bit like a sinusoidal curve. But anyway, let's look at the bright side and start with the targets out there in the future. Example in the public service, we have to achieve energy savings of not 20%, but 33.3% by 2020. We have to have total terminal load in the public service, in the whole country actually, something like about 12% of the heat load. That's 12% of all the oil lorries going the road. So I suppose there's certainly exciting targets out there, and I suppose, you know, we have the chance to sort of meet those targets, and that's going to be the challenge. Anyway, the HSC, yes, I was there until last year. Sorry, Paddy, which one is this the toggle one again? Sorry, I just toggled one here, it doesn't seem to work. Some of these computers sometimes are a bit different. Sorry, thanks. Yeah, so I was with the HSC up to last year, and then Mary Harney came with this package, and I suppose it was hard to turn it down. But she did say actually there was nothing else going to be available, but that doesn't seem to be true either, because I think now they're talking about another one. But anyway, in the HSC, and like any public service, you're going to look at a number of opportunities to get biomass. One is at the initial briefing stage, and the new build, that's certainly one that springs to mind. Certainly the European Performance Billing Directive is saying strongly, and that's been revised a few times, that you have to look at alternative energy and the low carbon. I think somebody just closed the door there, maybe. Thank you. And you're looking at LZC, low carbon, and certainly biomass fills that requirement. In the HSC in latter times, I'm seeing a big change in that. Certainly the delivery of services is moving from the large, heavy building, difficult to heat, like the psychiatric, the old geriatric hospitals, to smaller buildings. And I'll talk a bit about that as well. And that has some relevance for biomass, probably not all good, because heretofore the large buildings were ideally suitable for large solid fuel. When I came first to the HSC, most of certainly the low and the psychiatric hospitals was supplied by large treatment plant, and they all work fine. In fact, I would say this, the challenge for the industry out there who are here today is to get the plants that are being sold now as good as those old turf plants were. They were fantastic, they were far and brickeens, they never gave any trouble, a joy. Right, so at the initial briefing stage, the SPM and all the models are basically going to tell us to put in as low a carbon requirement in the building as possible, and that's great. SPM, IES, there's loads of models telling us what to do. Getting back to conversion of existing plants, and Paddy mentioned that there. Yeah, it's related to oil and natural gas pricing. I suppose oil, certainly, wood chip is very competitive with oil, no question about that. Natural gas is a different ballgame. When prices have gone up, it's still, you know, difficult against natural gas, I have to be perfectly honest. ESCO is certainly the only option, because the HSC have no money, there's no staff, a lot of maintenance staff being run down to nothing. That's another challenge for us. Now, the last one I put in there for biomass, the bottom there, and I put a big question mark about it because I know the industry has been looking for this, is oil, at the oil tender stage. And yes, the HSC, like a lot of public bodies, are large procurement, you know, large procurers of oil, I should say. And now, before I left, I certainly gave a lot of thought to the whole area. I think certainly there's a lot of redesign of the procurement process required as it exists, because heretofore, and I've served on these procurement bodies, really there's only litres of oil, and there's only litres tank size on them, and I'll say this to you, they're not even accurate. So I I'd say be a bit careful on that one. I'd like to see a bit more work, and I think RB are doing a bit more work on it. It certainly needs a bit more work before I think it can run, because the procurement process has its own rules, as everybody knows. They're long, they're cumbersome. So it's probably, I won't say anymore, it's a bit more work required there. I went down to Clonmel yesterday because I hadn't been back there, and I spent a lot of my years with the HSE down there, so I said I'd take a trip down to see what was happening. And lo and behold, there was a veritable hive of activity. There was at least on the site there, some of you may know it, includes psychiatric hospital, includes South Tipperary General Hospital and all the community care facilities. I went up to Glenconner and looked down, and my God, there was 3 major jobs down there. And actually, they were all to do with what I'm talking about. I met John, not this thing, I'll probably keep holding it up, but anyway, I hope you can hear me. It's okay, Betty, I think I'll probably just work with it. I met John Maloney came to site. That was the previous Fianna Fáil, can I use the word Fianna Fáil, Junior Minister for Health. And we met him down in Clonmel. It's only 2 years ago. And God, he promised all these things down there. This was Vision for Change. You might have heard about it, where psychiatric hospitals are to close, and all the services are going to be delivered in smaller, more client-oriented buildings, rather than the psychiatric large hospital. And my God, it's well underway, as I saw in Clonmel yesterday. There was, as I said, there's a like Celtic Tiger Ireland back there on that site. Anyway, this is one of them. High Sport Hospital. This is on the Western Road in Clonmel. Again, Paul Overy would have done, he's a local consultant down there, would have done the analysis on our briefing there, and he would have come up with, he'd have used SBEM, which is the standard one out there, there's a few others as well, and Energy Plus, and came up with a BER, a practical BER, a B1. I hope I'm done with this speaker, but look, it seems to be some feedback, but I'll keep going anyway. Anyway, the option he came up with was natural gas condensing boilers, solar hot water, and a micro CHP. That's the backseat, and you know, that'll be the first one that I know of. We have the DAX, which is the other micro CHP, down in Tipperary as well. So now we'll have the small one, and they're certainly exciting projects. Not biomass, as you can say, a bit too small for there. It didn't actually. Now this is the other one in Clonmel. There's 3 of them down there that I saw yesterday. This is a 40-bed. I got a picture of this. I said get a picture of it because the picture speaks 1,000 words. Varmings were involved here, and actually there was a fair amount of, maybe stand back. Can you hear me there? There was a fair amount of debate on this one actually. I suppose there was 2 options they came up with. Well, in fact, the first option they recommended actually was on the bottom there, which was the CHP, combined heat power, air heat pump, and natural gas condensing boilers as backup. I suppose I told them to do further work on it because I still believe, like Paddy was saying, the whole thing of using a fuel that's hopefully generated locally and jobs and stuff like that, and the zero carbon, certainly in relation to biomass. So we did a lot more analysis under them. I got them to do a lot more analysis, and eventually we plumped for the biomass boiler down there and the natural gas condensing boilers. I still think the other option, I'd love to see it in another job because it's an exciting option. Combining heat and power, supplying electricity, and the air heat pump supplying heat. It's a lovely combination. But look, we have the biomass heat boiler, but I'm shoving a word of warning out there. It was hard to get this, and you know, the industry is going to have to make sure that all of these projects, and in fact I'll say this as well, that actually there was probably a cost premium over the one on the bottom. So it's not that we're not, you know, certainly in the past, we are certainly, you know, even putting money a bit above the ordinary into this whole area. But what I'm saying, I suppose, and I'll say it a few times, is we're going to have to ensure that this whole biomass service basically gives no problems because, you know, the contracts have to be watertight. We cannot have anything breaking down and looking at spending more money. And we've had small experiences of that, and they're bad, and that won't be good. But look, we'll hope that this one is a good success. That's the building itself. It's a beautiful building, 40 beds with 4 10-bed areas, north, south, east and west, all linked into a sort of a common area. And you know, it's a marvellous looking building, and it's a credit to the HSE, and I haven't been out with it about the HSE, like everybody else here, I'm sure. This building is a beautiful building, and will be a pleasure to work, and will be a pleasure for the patients as well who are going to be in it. This is the biohazard, just a quick shot of it. It's a pellet boiler, as I was saying. But again, I keep saying again that hopefully the suppliers here, I don't know if Owen is here, but I think I said to him yesterday that he's going to have to give a kind of an arm-proof contract that the HSE doesn't even know it's there. This is this lead secret, I think. We don't want to know it's there. This is the way the turf was. I think there was one guy who worked for Gordon and Mona. When he came around for a chat and a cup of tea. There was never any problems. If you have problems at all with these, I'll tell you, it's you know, you'll go back to the gas ones around the wall there. Primary care units, now the other one in Clonmel, just quickly, is what they call the Community Mental Health Centre. It's down on the corner there of the site. I won't talk so much about it because there wasn't, you know, it's going to be a beautiful building. It's tied in to the existing St. Luke's building there. I won't say any more about it, but look, now the next big change in health services, I suppose, is the primary care units. And this is the interface that the HSE will have with all of us. All the doctors, HSE staff, which includes like the physios, the occupational therapists, the home health, are all being grouped together in large buildings. And it's the way that it's really going to be the way the services are going to be delivered to every one of us here. There's one in Kilkenny, there's a few of them in Kilkenny now, there's the one in Airfield was opened recently. Now, excuse me again, these were procured by developer tender basically, and you know, all the connotations that we don't like to hear. But in all honesty, when I saw the details first, it was a procurement process, as I said, and there was nothing about energy in it. In fact, the only thing in these buildings was a long lease and a rate. The developer locally was asked to give a rate per metre squared for 30 years. There was a bit on room data sheets, which was basically just sockets. Now, you would say that that's going to be you know, a recipe for disaster. But in fact, in all honesty, when we got them down locally, we certainly got talking to the developers, and I would have met each of them and given them an attempt at an energy brief. They were all very amenable to taking on board what we wanted. Because the first experience we had of one of these units was in Cashel. In fact, it was the first one. I was probably there about 5 years ago. But somebody went off and just rented a building downtown there. And I would put it this way to you, I think the staff would probably have vacated it at this stage and gone back to the hospital, because it was very unsatisfactory. How was it unsatisfactory? It overheated in the summer and didn't heat in the winter. There was no ventilation. So it was all bad design, miserable for people to work in it, and it's a new build. So I suppose what I was trying to do then is set the brief, at least, that you've got a half you know, well-designed build, that you could work with it, that it wasn't going to be overheated. So what I was insisting on is that they do the simulation, the SPEMs, the IESs. They're fantastic tools. They don't cost a whole lot, but only software, and you can work out, you know, how every room will behave throughout a year in each of those buildings. So a bit of simulation. Generally, we would set a standard of B2, because in fact, if I can mention Eamon Ryan, he actually had a draft strategy instrument that all buildings that were leased in the public services should be that. Now, I don't know if that ever came into being, but at least there's excuse me again, there is actually an effect of another previous minister that's probably certainly good. And I would say, probably, even though we'd ask any of these to look at biomass as well, local fuels, I would say that biomass generally would be unlikely in a lot of them, because they were generally going to be in the middle of town. It's going to be very difficult to get biomass into them. Well, I'm just going to go quickly. Some of you have, Michael Pendergast has warned me out there. He said, "Is that the old paper you got before?" So I said, probably that's what it is, but look, these are some of the, I'll just go through some of the conversions we have done, and this was Thomastown. I hope, I don't know, is Clear Power here? Oh, there you are. Is that one still going?
Yeah.
That's great. Because I was out on the bike there about 2 weeks ago, and I stopped off on a Sunday. It was one of those nice Sundays, and I dropped in there, and I wasn't too sure whether it was going or not, so I'm delighted to hear it was. This was a great project, actually, and fair dues to Clear Power. They provided excellent service on it, and, you know, there it is. I suppose the risks, the only risk here is not the biomass, is that, remember I spoke about that the HSE is going from the heavy buildings to the light buildings. Well, this is a geriatric hospital. Bed numbers are reducing. It's an old 1840s building. HICA is ruling the roost. That's the quality bit of the HSE. Some I've heard it described as the jackboot policy of the HSE, but they're beginning to decide the fates, and will decide the fate of a lot of these buildings, unfortunately, because, you know, there are such great servants in terms of geriatric care. We certainly got savings, they're not going to spend a whole lot more time on it, and CO2 is down as well. So it's a bit sad if, you know, these old buildings like that, you know, are going to be moved to the smaller, can I say, private homes, which is probably the trend that's happening. Now, I would say as well, I suppose, you know, when you get into a well-designed smaller building, you're certainly going to, yeah, as Paddy's telling me, and I won't spend much time. These are other ones as well. These are prices I would have done back in, Paddy, what, about 3 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Right. Should get there, yeah. Yeah, mixed experience with some of these. For example, we're finding that if you put in a biomass boiler on an energy efficient hospital, the summer load becomes a problem. So we found in one instance that it's better to maybe have the biomass boiler off, the pellet boiler off during the summer, and just operate it in the winter. That's something we probably wouldn't have seen, but look, it's understandable because the heat loads are so small in the summer. St. Canice's, that was the potential ESCO. Didn't unfortunately work. There was too much work required in it that it just failed. I won't bore you with that. Well, I would just say that that's just sort of a regression analysis that we would have done in some of the psychiatric hospitals. It makes the point, I suppose, what I'm trying to make there is that, and I'll just go through it quickly, is that the base load, this one down here, that's the intercept, 512 gigajoules. That's just telling you that these buildings, something like 70% of the heat you're putting into them is used for the small bit of hot water and the losses in the system, which is ginormous. It should be down around 20 to 30%. So I suppose the move that I'm talking about from the big heavy buildings to the lighter buildings, if you could get rid of those big heavy buildings at a stroke, my God, it's, you know, they're beautiful old buildings like Canice's and they're protected. But what has happened is actually when the patients are gone, offices have moved in. So it's going to take more than energy performance contracting to solve that. But no, what I'm saying is that really, you know, they are difficult buildings in terms of certainly the modern ones like we saw there, the modern new hospital to eat, no question about that. Kilcreen, I'll just finish up here. The property profile is changing in health. It's going from heavy to light. Probably biomass will have to be smaller. It's going to get in. Biomass is going to have to compete with the other options out there. And certainly there is competition from the other technology options that I just went into there. I suppose in terms of conversions, yeah, I think Paddy alluded to it at the ESCOs, but you know, I think even some sort of, like Northern Ireland, UK, yeah, that's for sure, we're going to have those tariffs, it certainly helps. And I'll just say it again, that you know, there has to be combined heat and maintenance contracts because if I hear, and I have heard of guys coming back to me after putting in something and, you know, the feed systems or the flues aren't right, that is bad and you have to avoid that. So I'll end with that.